So the Warriors beat the Bucks 2 nights ago in what was a hell of a game. Steph went off at the end of regulation and in overtime, and the Warriors picked up a much-needed home win to end a 3-game losing streak. Now, it was a little surprising how close the game was, given how Giannis was out for the Bucks, but what wasn't surprising is that the Warriors won at home, because that's what they've been doing all season. The Warriors are 28-7 at home this year, tied with Cleveland for the 4th best record and trailing only Milwaukee, Denver, and Memphis. While they've been amazing at home, their road record is killing them. They're 7-26 on the road. That's 4th worst in the league and only better than the Spurs, Rockets, and Pistons. And it's so surprising because the Warriors in years past were always known for their ability to win on the road. So what changed this year? Well, I have a theory. Before we get into the Warriors though, consider leaving a like on the video, giving us a subscribe, and hitting that notification bell so you never miss out on one of our videos. March Madness is starting up this week, and to celebrate, we're going to be doing a giveaway. We started our own group on ESPN's Tournament Challenge. Here are the details, and the link is also down in the description. You can only submit one bracket, so make your picks count, and whoever finishes with the highest score will win an NBA jersey of their choice. And all you have to do to be eligible to win is be subscribed to the channel. Also, Ben and I will be competing in this as well. We'll be filling out our own bracket on Wednesday during our podcast. So tune in on Wednesday to see who we think is taking home this year's national championship. Now, the Warriors are interesting because if you strictly watch them when they play at home, you'd be hard-pressed to find anything wrong with them. They have a serviceable offense to pair with a suffocating defense, and that's yielded one of the best home court records in the entire league. On the other hand, if you only watch them on the road this year, you'd think this was a lottery team. Their offense is fine on the road. It takes a little bit of a step back compared to when they're at home, but their defense falls off a cliff. They go from 3rd best to 3rd worst. Now, while it's expected that teams are going to play better at home than on the road, I cannot recall a team in recent memory that has been so dominant at home and so inept on the road. So what's wrong with them? Well, really quickly, before we let loose with the conspiracy theory, let's address some other potential causes. Firstly, are the Warriors just pacing themselves? Well, maybe. The Warriors learned in 2016 that pushing for every regular season win you can isn't always a great idea, and in subsequent years, they paced themselves nicely so they were fresh for the playoffs. If they were pacing themselves, though, now would be the time to turn it up, as there's only 14 games left in the season, and the Warriors' playoff spot is by no means guaranteed. Secondly, maybe their home court advantage is just that good. Well, the Warriors have an incredible home crowd, no doubt. Teams have a nasty habit of just melting in Golden State, especially when the Warriors get on one of their signature 3rd quarter runs. But while their defense is impeccable at home, their offense is just okay, which makes me wonder, is the crowd more so getting to the other team rather than inspiring the Warriors, if that makes sense. And finally, maybe the roster just isn't good enough defensively. One of the most overlooked parts from the Warriors teams of the past was that they were great defensive teams, often ranking in the top 5 in defensive rating. In fact, they had the best defensive rating in the league just last year. This team certainly isn't as good as rosters from years past, especially with Andrew Wiggins missing almost half the season. But if you look at this roster on paper, they still have a handful of decent defenders. Plus, if they were just a bad defensive team, they'd probably be a bad defensive team at home too. Not have the 3rd best rating in the league. It's expected that they should be a little worse on the road, but there's no reason they should be as bad as they are. And that brings us to the punch. And pretty much everything from here on is going to be pure speculation, so tinfoil hats on, everybody. The punch, as I'm going to call it, was one of, if not the biggest story of the NBA offseason. In case you were living under a rock, on October 5th, 2022, only 13 days before the start of the season, Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole after an altercation in practice. When the initial report came out, it was a pretty big story at the time, but I don't really think many people thought much of it. Teammates get into it at practice from time to time, but almost always cooler heads prevail and everybody moves on. Michael Jordan famously punched Steve Kerr during a practice before the 95-96 season, but the two were able to patch things up and they went on to win 3 championships together, with Kerr even hitting the game-winning shot in the 97 finals off an assist from Jordan. There is, however, one big difference between the Jordan Kerr punch and the Draymond Poole punch. We actually saw one of them. 2 days after reports of the punch came out, video of the incident was leaked online. I'm not gonna show it because YouTube probably wouldn't like that, but if you haven't seen it, it's pretty bad. Poole and Draymond are seen talking before going face to face. Poole then pushes Draymond, who responds in kind with a vicious right hand, knocking Poole down before both are separated by coaches. Warriors management, coaches, and players went into crisis management overdrive, insisting that this wasn't a big deal and things like this happen all the time. Important to note that Draymond wasn't even suspended for this. He was only fined because apparently Warriors management didn't want him to miss ring night. To me, this was always something that was overlooked, as the organization essentially gave Draymond a slap on the wrist after he knocked out a teammate because apparently he deserved to be at that championship ceremony. Both Draymond and Poole addressed the incident, saying that they had put it behind them and that they were focused entirely on defending their crown. Well, that defense started terribly, with the Warriors going 3-7 in their first 10 games. But when the Warriors season started to level off, everyone kind of just forgot about it. I think we all assumed that the Warriors had moved past the punch and that they would eventually return to form. After all, they have had one of the strongest cultures in the NBA for the better part of a decade. Well, it's now mid-March and yeah, they're still not playing well. And even through all these months, I rarely, if ever, heard the punch being brought up as a possible reason for their inconsistent play. Only now is it really being mentioned, and it took a Draymond on-court tantrum after Poole wouldn't pass him the ball. So here's my theory. I don't think this team ever got over the punch. Now here's the thing. I think they can manage it when they're at home. You're in a familiar setting, you got your home fans to back you up, you sleep in your own bed the night before a game. I think the Warriors are so comfortable at home that they can push aside any negative feelings that still linger from the punch. When they're on the road though, you're around the team 24/7, gotta take long flights before the games, every arena you play in is gonna be sold out and probably a little louder than usual. I think there's still some bad blood with this team, and I think it festers when they're away from home. Doesn't help that they got a bad habit of getting off to slow starts on the road, which is only gonna compound frustrations. In fact, they've lost 17 straight road games in which they trailed after the first quarter. Now, this theory is just one man's opinion. We haven't heard anything leak out from the Warriors to indicate that there's anything wrong internally, and of course, if there were any locker room problems, they're never gonna say it outright. But at this point, what else could it be? I'll put it like this. Say hypothetically, Ben and I get into an argument and one of us punches the other. If we come out a few days later and say that nothing's wrong, we settled everything, it's all behind us, and then the quality of our content just plummets, I think it would be fair to assume that maybe everything isn't okay. And with the Warriors, weirdly enough, something like this has precedent, once again involving Draymond. Everyone remembers when Draymond and KD got into it in 2018, and Draymond told KD to his face, "We don't need you, and we won without you." Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for KD in Golden State. So, is the punch to blame for the Warriors' troubles? Well, the Warriors do have plenty of other problems to deal with. They're getting older, they've been hit pretty hard by injuries this year, and this roster isn't nearly as deep as it's been in years past. But I think the punch is just accentuating all those problems. It's this dark cloud that's just hanging over the team, and I think people are finally realizing it was a much bigger deal than we initially thought it would be. Even after the Warriors' slow start, it was something that was easy to write off due to how strong the Warriors' culture had been. But as the season progressed and they continued to struggle, it became harder and harder for people to just dismiss. Now, where do the Warriors go from here? Well, for the rest of this year at least, they're still going to be a team that nobody wants to see in the postseason. They still got Steph and Clay, who can go nuclear at any moment, and they've got as much playoff experience and championship pedigree as anyone in the league. And hell, they've earned so much respect over the years that I'm still not ruling out the possibility of them just turning it around and making it back to the finals. But beyond this season, I think this is the beginning of the end of Draymond Green in Golden State. I know Draymond is a beloved Warriors icon, but he's getting up there in age, and this year marked the second time he's alienated a star teammate. When he did it to KD, that team still had enough talent to make the finals, and honestly, they would have won it if not for the injuries. This team isn't that talented, and while Draymond and Jordan Poole may still be able to play together, I don't care what anyone says. Their relationship is never going to be the same again. And until one of them leaves, maybe the Warriors will never be the same either. That's the video, guys. What do you think is the biggest reason for the Warriors' struggles? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving it a like, as it really does help us out. And if you enjoy our content, why not check out some of our other videos as well? Make sure to tune into our podcast on Wednesday for our picks for the NCAA tournament, and don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.